Welcome to the Haunted Hacker podcast version September 2.0. This is the second podcast for this month. A little bit of news before we get started. The episodes are now being sponsored by Private Internet Access, piavpn.com/haunted hacker. Get your 82% off for the month of October, the Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Speaking of which, I'll be speaking for ICE this upcoming month for Cybersecurity Awareness Month. I spoke for DHS last year this time, and now I'm moving on to ICE, so we'll see how that goes. Kind of looking forward to it. Other than that, not a whole lot of news. On the IT front, it looks like there's a new point of sale malware out, so watch where you put your credit cards and debit cards. Other than that, we'll go ahead and get started. Today, I have Zinet. I'll have Zinet introduce herself. So I'll have Zinet introduce herself and give a little bit of background about herself, and we'll go from there. So Zinet, it's a pleasure to have you here. It's my honor to have you on the show. I've been looking forward to it. We connected on a few posts that I had on LinkedIn regarding kids and cybersecurity. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, good morning, and thank you for having me on, Mike. Like you said, yeah, we connected on LinkedIn, and this is our first time interacting over Zoom or Zooming. My name is Zinet Kemal. I work in cybersecurity. I'm a mom of four, an immigrant from Ethiopia, a recent one, and I'm a career changer from the legal field to the field of cybersecurity, and started my cybersecurity career towards the end of 2017 or 2018, relatively newer, but I work in cloud security space currently at a Fortune 500 organization. I'm also a children's book author. I have 2 children's books in the background, and I'm also in the board for Black Girls in Cyber, a nonprofit organization. And what else did I leave? I think I'm a grad student at Georgia Tech. Fingers crossed, 3 courses left to finish to the finish line. Yeah, and I'm glad to be here and chat anything related to cybersecurity, especially kids online or anything really about cybersecurity. I don't know if I know a few things, but I can chat. I'm happy to chat about topics within cybersecurity.
That's pretty awesome. So we have a lot of common denominators. The nonprofit that you're a part of, I've actually had on their podcast as well. And I spoke at Georgia Tech last year, Georgia Tech and University of Georgia, cybersecurity department. So it's really interesting how small the world is and how many times paths cross. So tell us about your books. That's what really caught my eye when we started talking. I think that I had just got done filming the Euronews episode for the game Kids and Gaming, and I was discussing that. And we connected on your book that you wrote. So tell us about your book.
Yeah, I've seen that documentary, and as I was seeing, it felt like it's my book turned into a movie kind of situation. Oh my God, I discussed that. That's so true. It's really amazing. I think it's really important to talk about topics about kids, like don't leave them behind, right? In our cybersecurity conversations. But the book came about, it's published this year, in the beginning of this year in February. It's my second children's book. And like the first book, it's also inspired by my kids. Like I mentioned, I have 4 kids, 2 boys and 2 girls between the ages of 12 and 3, 12, 9,
Wow.
7, and almost 3. I should say almost, because they don't like when I approximate their ages. They want it to be exact on the same day, even if it's 1 day left. But during the pandemic, they were playing online games more than ever, because that's the only social interaction that they were able to do. So on more than, I think, 2 occasions, 2 of my kids got hacked in that process. And that exposure, and also a lot of the social media groups, moms groups that I've seen a lot of kids getting hacked and saying, oh, we lost our digital currency. And that whole thing spurred up the conversation that we were having. I thought it might be useful if it's happening in our home, this conversation must be happening elsewhere too. So I thought it might be a good idea to emphasize the importance of online safety, teaching them, as much as we're giving them the tablets, connecting them to the internet. Anything home and it's connected to the internet becomes vulnerable. So how do we instill that security mindset for the younger generation, talking to them about don't share your password, even if they're your best friends, and be careful about how you share your personal information. And then just teaching them about basic security, right? In using like the gaming, because that's something that they can relate to. If you talk to them, when I do author visits in schools or some community events, when I mention like who plays online games, everybody raises their hand, right? The boys, the girls. So it's something that you can relate with the kids before you part in that important information about limit your screen time. That's one of the themes. Or how do you be careful about not sharing your personal information? That includes your school name, home address. Just as much as we tell them, be careful when you cross the street. We tell them like to hold hands or not to talk to strangers, but how are we really as parents teaching them to be careful online as well? I think that's something I've seen disconnect from my home and then from the community that I am in and the mom groups that I've seen. And just, I don't need a case study. I have 4 kids. Like I know how they interact. I know how much they love the games, and I know how much they're vulnerable and they're targeted. So the book, Oh No, Hacked Again, I have it here.
That's awesome.
All of the 4 kids are my own kids and their own names. I want to make sure that kids who look like me and my kids are also represented in the book. So it's teaching kids just the basics of online safety, but at the same time, I've also noticed that as a career transitioner to the field of cybersecurity, I noticed that the field isn't diverse. So inspiring girls who look like me and my kids to aspire to be in this field as well, and see this as their career option, to be in cybersecurity too. So that's the whole premise of the book.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, you have a lot going on with that book. I think the diversity aspect of it is super important, but the fact that you're addressing and making it consumable for children, I think is super important, because what I've noticed with parents and with children, it's not that the parents don't care. A lot of them don't know. And then there's a huge gap, a huge knowledge gap when it comes to the technology that the kids are using and the games they're playing with the parents. So they don't necessarily know everything that goes on in the game and who they're talking to and the transactions they're doing online. So I think it's super important. And that conversation is, I've often wondered, how do you bring that up with a child? When online gaming became a thing for my son, he was already probably 10 or 12. So by then it was super easy to explain it to him and to show him the repercussions and the consequences of what happens when you get hacked online. However, like the younger kids, I've seen as young as like 4 or 5 playing online games on iPads. I mean, how do you even address that conversation with a 5-year-old?
I agree. I think to the point that you mentioned, like parents are well-intentioned. It's just the gap. Like me, as someone who didn't grow up with online games or access to the internet, like I don't know these things. The only thing I know is Mario games. And my kids think that I'm very old school. Like, what do you play? I wish I could play their games. They even created an account for me, like Minecraft, Roblox, but I just don't have the time. But I try to make sure that what they're playing on, what apps are downloaded, like the basic things that we tend to neglect. I think those are the things, like just be mindful. Like I'm learning, I don't know what I'm doing, but I think those are the main things. But to your point, I think this a book is meant to be like a conversation starter, right? Through this kind of stories, if you're having a conversation, the kids understand as young as 5. Like the book is written from age 6 to 13, 14, but the message could go beyond that because kids older also play online games, these games that we know of. The game that's mentioned in the book is fictitious, but they know what game I'm talking about when they're playing it, right? It's called Zokanda is the name of the game, the platform, and then there are different games on it, but they know the digital currency. When they get hacked, the digital currency that they lose makes them so stressful that they ask their parents to replace that for them because now they lost everything that they've built, the avatar and all of those things, right? That's something that I learned from my kids. But this type of conversation having within the family and opening that line of communication between a child and a parent, like that's what I emphasize most in the book is that if they run into issues online, because we cannot monitor them all the time, even if you have parental control, right? Are they comfortable to come to us and tell us that they run into issues before trying to resolve that by themselves, or be a target for online predator and they don't tell you anything until it's too late? We don't want that to happen. So like communication, what happened, like what games are you playing? If you have time, play with them. Like those are the things that I try to do, but there's never enough time to sit down and play as much as they would like to play. And if you don't put limits, they would like to play all the time. It's never. Sometimes I try to test them, like to see when they would stop. It's never. Even if they're hungry, they're not going to stop. So we put time limits. At nighttime, it's not allowed. On weekends, it's only like 2-3 hours, but they always ask for extension. They manipulate you. You know how kids are. So I think having conversation, just small every time, let's be careful what to click for. Phishing is discussed. 2-factor authentication is discussed. I think in stories that are relatable, I think we can part in more messages. And hopefully we have more cartoons about cybersecurity and that type of thing. That's what I'm thinking. Maybe you could turn your documentary to a cartoon episode on PBS or that type of thing, because they like to watch those and they like to relate to those stories.
It's really funny. I actually did a podcast episode with some guys last year, and they had their artist create a cartoon character of my likeness, I guess, and it was so creepy to see myself in the cartoon. But sky's the limit. Who knows? Maybe there might be a cartoon or something coming out. But I think it's really cool the way that you set up the book and the way that you use your own stories and your own children as the examples. I think that adds a real touch to it, because I think another thing that lacks in the discussion with cybersecurity and kids is exactly what happens. Let's talk about the bad stuff that happens. I think that's important. And I think your book delivers that in a way that, it's not in the face of the kids and it's not, shocking, but it's enough to get them thinking of, hey, maybe I don't want that to happen to me. But, it's really hard to protect kids. I had 2 boys when they were teenagers that when they got online, no telling what happened. I actually had one of them who hid his phone from me for probably about a month. And his brother had told me that he had gotten malware on his phone. And he was a teenager in high school. So, just assume what he was probably doing with his phone. And so I asked him where his phone was at, and he brings it to me. And it's got an FBI, this device has been locked by the FBI. You have to pay X amount of, crypto through PayPal. Just nonsense, right? But he thought it was actually the FBI. And that's how scared he was. And I had to sit down and have that discussion with him. The things you do have consequences. So, it may be malware this time, but who knows? Next time it could be the FBI. So I think it's really important to be honest with kids and transparent. And, if they have a question, like my son asked me about, trafficking and what happens with child trafficking. Because they talk about that a lot on TV and online. So, have those discussions. It's a difficult discussion to have, especially as a parent. But it's things that they need to hear. So, if you're listening to the podcast, don't avoid those conversations with your kids for sure.
Or don't assume that they're too young, because if they're connected, if they're connected to the internet, have a device, I think they're smart. We underestimate kids. They are very smart. There are times that I even hear them, like when cooking in the kitchen, like they have conversations and they know and they see what you're doing. So
Right.
be a good role model, I think, as an adult. I think because more than they listen to what you tell them. I think they see what you're doing. I mean, that time on the phone or on their computer might be because they see us do it a lot more. But it's important to have those conversations for sure. And the concept of online predator was also discussed. And I think 95% of the things that was written in the book is actually what happened at one point when my kid was talking to someone and he was telling him, like, he's his big brother, don't talk to anybody else. They're telling you behind those avatars that they're 13 or 12-year-old boys, but you never know. It could be an adult big man, I mean, who's targeting those people for some other inappropriate things, right? So it's important. So it's just at the moment, it was just a parent and a kid conversation, blocking the person and everything. But then after I published the first one, it's like, it became a thing after they got hacked, like, oh, this could teach people something and having a conversation. And speaking about turning yourself into a cartoon, I think I did mine. So it is weird.
That's awesome.
When I do the book, she's in a meeting. So the kid is coming to tell her about the hack. So she's scared, you know, how they are scared about telling what happened because they were told to be careful, and especially if it happened, you know, more than once, because it's, oh no, hacked again, because it has happened before. So it'll be cool.
Yeah, it definitely happens a lot with kids too. You know, just not too long ago, I was talking about an incident where a kid got hacked and had his dad's credit card taken from his online gaming account and used. So I mean, there's risk to the kids and to the parents. So one thing that I like to do, and I've done this for a very long time, is use VPN when it comes to gaming. I don't know if your kids use a VPN client when they game, but it's super important, especially on your phones. They have apps for phones now as well.
Our networks are divided. Like they use a different one. They don't log into the one that you use for work. That's something that they say always, can we connect to yours? Because yours is faster. Sometimes they do that, but we do that not only for security purposes, but just from efficiency and management, because we use that to lock it at some point or something like that. But yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I usually use VPN. VPN helps protect the child's identity as far as the IP address, you know, being able to trace them back. And this is a selfless plug for the sponsor of the episode. Private Internet Access.com has VPN clients for kids, for mobile phones, for laptops, you name it. It helps protect your child's identity, IP address, location, when it comes to, you know, malicious outsiders or predators on games. Super important to play games through VPNs. I can't stress that enough, because there is account information, credit card information, private data that you don't want to slip it out. So if you get a chance, go to piavpn.com/hauntedhacker, buy your VPN and protect your kids. So Zinet, tell me about the next book you're writing.
Like I mentioned, I'm in grad school, so I'm kind of very squeezed in, and I'm also trying to work like a grown-up book with other professionals that's yet to be announced. So in the prep work for that one, but I have ideas. But you know, when you're busy, you get good ideas. But I am prioritizing about finishing my school and other stuff, but it's in the works. I have ideas.
Yeah.
You never run out of inspiration when you have 4 kids.
Oh no, you never run out of stories either. The stories that you can culminate through the years of raising kids is just amazing, especially when it comes to technology.
Exactly.
Crazy. So as far as you know, your move to the States and you know, what was it like for you coming to the States, and what's it like going into cybersecurity as a female, not only just as a female, but from another country, from another culture, from another background?
Yeah. So like I said, 9 years ago is when we moved from Ethiopia, where you never see snow, 13 months of sunshine. That's what it's called. Ethiopia. It's always sunny, even in winter. Like our winter is just rain, just spring. To the winter Minnesota. And Minnesota, I mean, everybody knows. When I say 6 months of Minnesota, people say that you're so innocent, thinking that Minnesota's winter is only 6 months. It's been an interesting change. For sure. So when I moved here, I have the 3-year-old, and then I was also 7 months pregnant with the second one, who's 9.5 now. And we knew no one when we moved here. It was just my husband knew someone from high school. He reached out over Facebook Messenger, where she said, come on over. But that's the only reason why we chose Minnesota, because a lot of people ask us, like, why Minnesota? Of all the times you could be anywhere. We love Minnesota now. The summer is nice. I just don't like the cold. So we moved here, and then the transition was huge. Like I said, I had a legal background. So soon after I had my, the second child, we settled. It's a lot of things, because we didn't know anybody, like I said. Because the person who even welcomed us, she had to go back to Ethiopia with her family 4 days after we arrived, because she never visited. I think she didn't visit her country for 8 to 9 years. So she had to go back. We came here whilst she was in the process of going back. So it was just like a few days of, oh, here's Minnesota, here's Costco, here's the store. And then she left, and it was just us in winter. So we most of the time figured out things on our own, but we made people that we call family afterwards. Because there is a huge community of Ethiopians and immigrants also in Minnesota, so that helped us. But I didn't know of cybersecurity. I just wanted to be in technology, because I've always been fascinated by technology and how it solves people problem, like just the idea of being transitioning to how do people solve problems through technology from just not having it, right? So that was like a huge jump, but I wanted to just be in some school. I took like a placement test, went to a nearby community college, and just enrolled into an associate's degree program for computer programming. I have no math background. Like I said, in law school, they don't teach you math or any computing stuff. So it was a huge intimidating classes, because a lot of the classmates never looked like me. A lot of the classes that I've been on, and then the things that they talk about, right? This project we did it in high school. In high school, I don't have computers in high school. So it was a huge change, a huge adapting, and a huge learning curve. Finished my associate's degree from there, and transitioned to a 4-year university, because even finishing the 2-year degree didn't help me see myself doing any of the things, because yet I felt like it's a lot of projects, programming language, a lot of math classes, catching up on things. But I finished the 2-year degree within 2 years. And then transitioned to a 4-year degree for computer science. Again, in that process during my senior year, that's when I got exposed to the concept of cybersecurity, which is interesting. Even for computer science programs, they don't have computer security classes. It's a lot of Java programming, that type of stuff, which is good for an operating system and discrete math, but not, it was only an elective class in computer security. That's when, okay, maybe let me learn about that. And then I took that elective class. I could have chosen something else too, but I chose that. Through that exposure, the professor he was also coaching at the same time a cyber defense competition, CCDC, a collegiate cyber defense competition. And he invited the whole class, like, come and join. It's on a Saturday. It's an additional responsibility, right? Besides taking, the full-time classes and family responsibility, is to go to on a Saturday and train. Most of it is self-learning. So I became part of that. Long story short, from a full class, it was only 8 students needed. The people who hold up until the end were 8 of us got picked to represent the university. And that exposure really helped me kind of see a sneak peek of like a security world, what a blue team does, the red teamers that are creating that fictitious, I guess, hack process, the cyber defense competition. And the university that I represented secured a 3rd place from Minnesota universities. So that gave me a good exposure, like teamwork, fighting against a common goal. It teaches you a lot of things, I guess, that, more than the degree program. I think that has helped me. And then afterwards, I started pursuing certifications, Network Plus, Security Plus, UISA, and you name it afterwards. I never stopped, right, since 2018. So that's how I got introduced to security, and I was doing an IT internship at a local government. So I started looking for roles within the same organization that is closest to security, and I found an IT security internship in IT audit team. That's when I got my first full-time job before graduation, after interning for 3 months. So it's a long story, but compressed in short. But that's in a nutshell my transition into the world of cybersecurity, coming from a different continent to making that. And so after the IT auditing role, I transitioned to an information security engineering role at the state government, and currently, after 2 years, to a cloud security engineering space at a Fortune 500 company, Best Buy. So that's cool. The short story, but it's never short. It's never short. I try my best.
That's awesome. I coming from another country, I think that gives you a little bit of insight, and a little bit a different experience than most people get. And I realized that when I went overseas and got kind of stuck in Europe for a couple of years. A completely different culture. Even though they spoke the same language, they looked the same, it was still a different culture. And I think the customs and traditions and the way you do things on a daily basis, just fitting into that culture is an experience within itself. And I think every kid should have that experience of going to another country and immersing himself into another culture for a while, because it opened my eyes to so many things, traveling to Asia and Singapore, the Middle East and the Mediterranean. There's so many different cultures, and each one has something you can learn from. So I like to say that my experience is a culmination of tons of different cultures and tons of different countries. And I think it makes a person well-rounded. It gives them a better, insight into how things operate, not just, within an organization, but on a human level. And it's cool to see the similarities between, different cultures. And I think diversity, I really bang a drum when it comes to diversity, because I think it takes multiple different types of minds and styles of thinking and problem solving to really address a problem. And for the longest time, cybersecurity was so male driven that, we didn't have that diversity. And I think now that we're starting to really experience that, I have to say, times now are much easier to address problems than before, because we think differently. There's so many different styles of thinking in an organization now, as opposed to before, where it was very black and white, and this is the way we do things, and there was no room to look outside the box. And it's people like you that come into the industry that really give us like a fresh set of eyes and a fresh experience. And I think it's really cool. So kudos for that. So tell me about, the nonprofit that you're involved in.
Yeah, it's recently joined. It's called Black Girls in Cyber. It's founded by the amazing Talia Parker. It's an organization, a nonprofit organization, to help women of color in privacy technology, like cybersecurity. Like it's all about finding that tribe. There's different programming to train women to be ready to the cybersecurity workforce, like providing that pipeline, finding internships, and just training them as a cohort for security certifications, and getting them ready for the workforce. So I work in the community outreach as a director, along with my amazing board members. So we work together, and it's very growing, even since a lot of work was done when I joined, but it's fast growing. So check out Black Girls in Cyber, whoever is listening to this podcast.
That's very cool. Yeah, I've also had Black Girls Hack on the podcast, as well as Blacks in Cybersecurity BIC. And all those groups are really cool. I met some really cool people through those groups, and some really interesting red teamers. Because my background is red team. That's what the school that I come from. So yeah, seeing the things that people are doing to help out, to create diversity and to really, help out, people, I think is really awesome. I can't say enough for those organizations. So going back to your time in school and kind of what, switched on the light for cybersecurity, you talked about the cyber challenge and that competition.
Mhm.
When I was in Texas, I participated in one. I was a red team portion, the attackers for University of North Texas. And so we basically fought against the college students, and they had to defend their networks and keep us out. And it was really cool watching them, pretty much play, line by line from the education that they were receiving at the time on how to stop these different attacks and different variations. It was a lot of fun. But the experience you gain from that it's almost like a real world experience. Did you get that feel like you were actually in something very serious that you needed to like address? Like a
Yeah.
real world?
Yeah, I think that's what interested me, is that it's hard in the beginning, because especially for someone who didn't have the background, just the learning was, I remember it was taking a lot more time to learn that versus doing school projects that were due, because I was taking full-time classes for the program in undergrad. But then just the self-help and learning that you do, it's a lot more. And then the interaction that you have and just understanding of it. I think it's just a passion, something that you like, that I always say that, like, look outside of your curriculum to find something that might interest you. It may not be the classes, but maybe this is the one. So yeah, definitely it has sparked the interest. Like, security sounds like something I could do, and then the more I learn about it, the more diverse, incredibly broad field that you could be doing so many things within it. I think that had me interested in pursuing more learning outside of the undergrad program. It was just more like learning the network plus the security plus UISA, and I was able to get those certifications while doing my full-time classes, because now I know what I want to be, where I want it to be. So definitely a good something that students on their campuses to tap in and check to see, like, it's a good experience to talk about it on interviews too. When I didn't have any experience, all I could talk about was that experience and then the certifications that I pursued while being in school. So sometimes the degrees help you for the HR, but you have to have something that would differentiate you from the crowd. It could be internship. And I think for me, it's a combination of a little bit of everything, the degree and also the transferable skills that you're getting from law school, in my experience in the legal field, and coupled with the certifications and those things. I think those are very valuable, and then you learn on the go, because there is no such a thing as, I have a degree and I'm done, because it's a continuous.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's my folly. I've been to multiple colleges, but probably have enough credits for a bachelor's, but I just never finished school because I just enjoy going to school. And you're a great role model for young women coming into cyber. What would be your, I guess, most important piece of advice for young women coming into cyber?
I would say it's very broad, and there's a place for everybody. And especially like women, until recently, it was only 11%. That's, 11% of the whole industry. And now 24%. And I think I saw some post this morning on LinkedIn about, we're saying that it's 24%, but where are the women? We're not seeing them, or something like that. I mean, there are a lot of the women, but I think, what is it that's holding off? Is it because it's the way we portray cybersecurity is really, the hacker thing. It's like, you don't have to be always thinking, you don't have to be always on a red team, and you don't have to be a math genius. Because that was the reason why that led me to pursue a different track back home, because I always thought that I'm bad at math. But when I came here, I had to face it, because you cannot like two things and say that you want to be in technology and avoid it. Like, I had to study harder to pass through those college algebra, discrete math, all the math that you can think of in computer science or programming classes. I took that, and I was able to get A's, because I believe that I'll do it this time. I'm not going to shy away from it. So it's not only math. You don't have to be a programmer, there's a thing called technical and non-technical things. I don't know how those are defined, but I don't like them. If you're in cybersecurity, you're doing anything. I mean, it involves technical knowledge.
Right.
So it depends on what kind of definition we're attached to the word technical and non-technical. But you do belong, and you just pursue it. Find the areas of cybersecurity that interests you from the whole 7 domains. It could be digital forensics. It could be working in the cloud, learn the cloud and learn the basics of security and how to manage risks, and just go for it if you like it. I mean, it may not be for everybody, it may not interest you, but if that is your interest, I think if you want something, you'll get it, you'll make it happen. I think that's my mantra. So
yeah, that's a good mantra to have. I try to tell people that, I mentor a couple guys who, one of them is terrified of speaking in front of people or giving a presentation. And I try to explain to him that this is a soft skill. You have to have this skill. And trust me, nobody likes getting up for the first time, but it's something we have to do. Broaden yourself, push yourself a little bit. And that's what I tell people. I challenge people to learn something new every day and do something they've never done before every day. Just expand your horizons, because cybersecurity is very broad. There's tons of principles and different verticals, just a lot of stuff that goes on. I think it's important to really push yourself to experience new things, because in cybersecurity, there's tons of things you can experience, tons of different roles. I've worked on both red teams and blue teams, and I think it's important to be well-rounded. So never, my advice would be never limit yourself. Always shoot for the stars. At least you'll come up to the moon if you fall short. So any last words for us, Zinet? It's been a pleasure having you on. I've really enjoyed it. And, I'd love to do maybe a collaboration on a kid's book sometime. Maybe the hacker meets the kids at one point.
Oh, I love that. I think I would love that. That would be great.
Cool.
A good illustration of you.
Awesome.
So yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on. And I just want to say as a last comment, like, pursue your dreams. I mean, I think we overthink things in cybersecurity. Have I known, I don't know how to speak English, the complexities or the challenges that we talk about within the industry beforehand, maybe I would have been too scared. So just find your area of passion and pursue that and start today, because we always say tomorrow. That's never my thing. Like, if I have an idea, the moment I have an idea about writing the book, I never wrote a book. I never did anything. I taught myself online or through Clubhouse apps and all of those things, learning from other authors how to teach myself to publish books. And I have 2 award-winning books right now. And so I just want to say, if you have a goal, don't put it for tomorrow. If it can be done today, something to start, it's something like just do it today. That's also another one of my mantra. But thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate you and look forward to that partnership in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you. And please stay in touch. And for the rest of you, we'll see you probably next week. And between now and then, be nice to each other. Don't bully each other, and watch out for your kids. I'll see you guys later. Thank you, Zinet.
Thank you, Mike.